Hey friend, welcome to the Daily Slack. Stoked to have you here. We're going like 6 days strong. This feels really good. If you're unaware of what this all is, essentially I'm daily vlogging for the entirety of July as I try to make a web series about slacklining and highlining. So we start shooting in August, and in between now and then I'm trying to find a way to get funding for my series and essentially just make the best stories that I can. So I'm bringing you along with me, and so far it's been a blast. It's been a challenge, but it's a blast. Today's a little bit rainy and boring, and I've spent most of the day so far just editing away. I reached out on social media and asked if you guys had any questions for me, and thankfully you did. So I'm going to take some time and answer those questions now.
Because you're always working with your camera, do you ever have trouble separating your work and your private life with your wife? And if so, how do you work to fix that?
That's a great question, Mike, and that's something that I actually found myself thinking about constantly, because my relationship with my wife is the most important relationship in my life, and I want to make sure that I respect the boundaries of that, respect what she wants, what makes her happy. One thing that's been really important to me is to just enter into that dialogue with her as we try to figure out those dynamics and how they're going to look for us. There's going to be tons of ways that other people go about doing it, and there's going to be a way that I'm going to end up doing it, and it's going to work for Janelle and I. And frankly, if it's not working for us, then something's going to need to change. So I personally find this balance of the utmost importance with the sustainability of what I'm doing. Mitch Harper asks on Facebook, what's the longest slackline you have filmed? Actually, the longest slackline that I've filmed is actually going to be filmed tomorrow, because the slackline guys are actually up in the mountains and they've rigged something absolutely massive, and so I'm going to be going up there to document it, and I'll share it with you once I've filmed it. Cecile asks, have you ever traveled outside of North America? Yes, I have. I've traveled down to El Salvador in South America, and I've also traveled to Jamaica. Chris asks, if you had to give up one of the following for a whole year, what would it be? Your cameras or your van? For me, it would actually have to just be the van, because cameras and my recording equipment is what I use to tell stories. And frankly, I'm not ready to give up telling stories quite yet, and I would be okay to give up the adventure van if I had to pick. Kitty asks, is what you're doing now always what you wanted to do growing up? That's a great question. For me, what I've wanted to do growing up has always been a flexible and malleable thing. Even now, when I think about what do I want to do with my life, it's more of a mission-driven thing and less of a specific task-driven thing. For me, what it can essentially be broken down to is I want to have a positive impact on those I'm fortunate enough to interact with in my life. And that's something that's taken on a lot of different shapes over the years as you try to look at how career and life mission can intersect and how one can help serve the other. But video making has always been something that I've been passionate about, and it's been something that I always pictured being alongside whatever I did. And it wasn't until the later years in high school where I realized, hey, making videos and making stories could actually, let's try to pursue that as my main thing instead of trying to have it be a thing that piggybacks alongside what I'm doing.
What is it that motivates you the most to go through all this effort in making all this stuff? Is it just the sheer enjoyment of creating it? Is it the end?
Sorry, Brent, I tried to capture your whole question there, but I accidentally cut it off, so my apologies. I think what you said there, is it the sheer enjoyment of creating it, or is it becoming famous, or it was something like that? That was kind of what your question was around. So where do I get the motivation to create all this stuff? This is definitely an answer where there's multiple layers, and I could go really deep, I feel, but there's also some more concrete, tangible things I could talk about. When I think about the motivation to make things, let's think about the making things, telling stories. Let's think of that as a rocket of some kind, and the fuel that's pushing that rocket forward is made up of several different things. And those are both intangible, personal, deep things. And those are also more practical, real, everyday things. On an intangible level, the drive to create feels very innate to who I am. It feels very core to what is most me. When I'm not creating, there's something that is deeply missing about what makes me me. So when I'm making things and I'm getting to build things, it really does make the fullest part of me come alive. And that's really hard to explain. But I know when I'm making things, I'm being closer to who I feel I'm made to be. On an external level for me, one of the things that drives me is I want to have the deepest and widest impact I can have with my life here on this earth. And I really feel the best way that I can do that with the skills I have is to be a megaphone for stories that are inspiring. Because I know stories that have inspired me have changed me, and I know that a changed person can then go on and change other people. And I know that a changed people can change the world. So that sounds like super high level, but on the most fundamental level, I know that a story well told about something worth telling can change someone, and changed people change the world. And so when I think about how can I have the widest impact with my single life, I've realized I can use these skills of storytelling to help tell stories that are worth telling and hopefully have the widest impact I can. Really, it's not up to me to try and make the most impact with my life. I know that the impact that I can have with my life is really when I take part in a bigger story that's happening. And so I'm constantly trying to balance that as I think about why I'm making things. And the last point I'll share on this question is actually super practical. I'm trying to create a business. And the reason why I'm trying to make a business is because I want to reach those goals that I talked about earlier. I want to be who I'm supposed to be here on this earth and create the deepest and widest impact on those around me. And I really do feel that the best way I can do that is through telling stories. And I feel like the best way that I can tell stories is to run a business that tells stories so I can own gear, own my own production company, and also tell the stories I want to tell on the side. And that all comes down to say it needs to be making money. And one of the things that's really helpful for making money, especially in the storytelling, media influencing space, is by being prolific, by creating a lot of things, and by, frankly, having an audience. So on one level, I need to be really honest and say a big part of this is I'm trying to be well known for telling stories. And that's both self-serving and it's selfish, but at the same time, it wraps into what's propelling this whole rocket forward about trying to have an impact. Because in this weird connected way, I really do feel if I am able to have an audience of people that are interested in the stories that I'm telling, when I have that story to tell, it actually gives me people to tell it to. And those people can then be the multipliers of that story who then pass it along to their friends. So it's this constant balance where I'm seeking to, on one level, it would be really fantastic to have an immensely massive audience that was fascinated by what I did and always curious. And at the same time, I know I'm only going to get that audience if I'm actually doing something worthwhile. So it's this constant tension of doing something worthwhile, creating lots of things, and trying to get people interested in what I'm doing. And that's something that I find myself right in the middle of. Because frankly, when you look at Left Coast Media House as a business, as something I'm trying to grow, right now, it really isn't that profitable. So I'm making a risky decision where I'm trying to focus more on creating lots of great content and try to subside the fears that go along with not making very much money. I'm very driven to make it work, and I have this foolish confidence even that it definitely is going to work. But the reality is right now, it's not a very sustainable business. So here we are with this series. This series for me, there's actually a lot riding on it. There's a lot riding on it because frankly, there's this really tangible tension at play through all of this. And that is the tension of wanting to be able to create stories that impact people and matter. Then also the tension of trying to become well known enough for telling stories that I can actually do this for my career. I am a strategizer and a planner. So there's definitely a plan for how this all fits together, but also a deep mission for how it all fits together in the big picture of what I want to do with my life. I see this series as potentially being very important, a very strategic business decision, but also a very personal decision because I want to tell stories that matter and mean something. I know I've set out to do a dangerous thing, and that is to try and make a living with my art, with my passion. And that is a very dangerous thing that a lot of people, when heading down that road, get completely burned. But again, I just have this deep confidence that I'm going to be able to figure out a way to make it work. And that's what this whole thing's about. That's why I'm documenting it. That's why I'm hoping to be able to share the realities that, with the perception of someone who's crushing it, it isn't always that way. And be as open as possible as I'm on this process of trying to figure out how I can make this creative, sustainable life work for me. So that's what drives me, Brent. That's what gives me so much fire to make the most out of each day that I can. And this is such a complicated and complex answer. And I know I'm definitely probably leaving a component out, but that's the way that I'm experiencing it right now. And that's why this series is so important to me, to do it with integrity, to do it with authenticity, and hopefully leverage it so I can get paid to make more things like this. Getting ready to head up into the mountains with the Slacklife BC guys tomorrow. They've been up there for a couple days already, working away on rigging this new massive Highline, and I'm heading up to join them, and I'm really looking forward to it. So getting the gear ready. And today's happy and crappy is, my crappy was, it really just wasn't as productive as I needed it to be. I didn't use my time as well as I could have, and that's just frustrating to me when there's like things that you could be doing and it's just hard to get them done. I hate wasting time like that. But my happy was finishing the Harry Potter series with my wife. That was a blast. We've been watching them for a while. Really enjoyed it. Now they're done. So yeah, see you guys tomorrow. And remember, life's better when you make stuff.